pass on their newfound wisdom. So invaders keep coming, keep trying to take our lands and our wealth. But then wealth flows through this land. And if our people have one failing, it is the love of wealth. It is sweeter than water. It is more powerful than the sword. For any sword can be turned aside with a gold coin. Gold will buy 1,000 warriors. And 1,000 warriors, why, they are the start of an empire.
Welcome to Rome Total War How to Play. Today's episode is going to be focused around Armenia. Now, Armenia is a very, very unique nation. It starts off with two provinces, but those provinces are smack dab in the middle of a whole nest of angry hornets. Taking a look at the map that's on screen now, you'll see that to the north we have Scythia. To the east we have a rebel province and Parthia. To the south we have the Seleucids and also Egypt. And to the west we have Pontus. Starting off as Armenia, there are a couple of things that we want to achieve. The first thing that we're going to want to do is work on your economy. So building roads, communal farming, and traders and markets are going to be your main priority. After you build up a little bit and you take a city or two, we're going to have to focus on allies because, as we can see right now, we're not making that much money. So, the best thing to do is to secure trading alliances with Scythia and Parthia while taking advantage of a currently disorganized Pontic or Seleucid state. My strongest advice, if you are just starting to play Armenia, is to focus on Pontus first, as, pull up the map please, there are several cities out there in the Turkish mainland that is owned by rebels. Taking out Pontus early will allow you access to those cities and thus increasing your profitability in trade. It'll also give you access to port cities on the coast, which opens up trade with factions such as Greece and Macedon. Egypt is going to be a concern for you. However, they're not going to be a huge threat until about turn 20. Because of this, we have 10 years to figure out the battle plans for taking out Pontus. But how are we going to take out Pontus? Let's take a look at some of their units. While Armenia lacks in size, it does make up in its uniqueness of units. It takes both units from the Parthian side of the technology tree and mixes it with some of the Hellenic sides of the technology tree. First, taking a look at our peasants, these peasants are essentially just boys with toothpicks. They are a little bit better than Roman peasants, but aren't really good in combat at all. Some peasants have hidden buffs in order to help it survive against tougher opponents, such as bonuses against cavalry or chariots. Unfortunately, Armenian peasants do not have any bonuses whatsoever. So with an attack of 3 and a defense of 3, these peasants are essentially just cannon fodder. The best use of peasants in the more challenging games of Armenia is to use them as town defense while using your more expensive, valuable units to conquer and fight battles. Be careful, though, as if your settlement comes under siege, chances are, with a horde of peasants, you will simply lose. Going into the Parthian side of the tech tree, though, the Armenians have hillmen. Hillmen are the pseudo Hastati variant for the Armenians. With an attack of 5 and a defense of 9, the Hillmen have a couple of unique abilities that you don't really get to see until you're out of the desert. The first one, Can Hide in Long Grass, is perfect for your Hillmen to launch counterattacks or even surprise ambushes on your flanks against cavalry. Because of this, they also have a bonus fighting cavalry and a hidden bonus fighting against chariots. However, they may charge without orders, so please make sure to keep an eye on them. With good stamina and the fact that they can sap, Hillmen are your shock infantry units. They should never be at the front of your battle. Taking a look at the Eastern Infantry, which is the last piece of the Parthian tech tree, the Eastern Infantry have less attack but one more defense than the Hillmen. They have poor morale, but they also have a bonus fighting cavalry and a hidden bonus fighting chariots. Because there are so many of them, they're able to hold a line fairly well. Use Eastern Infantry at the front of your combat. That way, when a charge comes in from Hastati or Principes, Axemen, or even Falksmen, the Eastern Infantry will be able to soften the blow. Once you're surviving in Armenia with these beginner units, you can start to appreciate some of the more advanced units. Starting off with the Heavy Spearmen, an attack of 7 but a defense of 17. Once you unlock Heavy Spearmen as Armenia, the game is essentially yours. Heavy Spearmen have access to a phalanx, which will help immensely against both the Parthians, which mainly use cavalry, Scythia, that mainly use chariots and horse archers, and Pontus, which mainly uses chariot archers and scythed chariots. They can sap, but using your heavy spearmen in any other method other than a phalanx is pretty much putting them on the back burner. They are exquisite at holding the line. They have very little attack for most spearmen and phalanx units in the game at this point. However, with a defense level of 17, it does make them one of the more tankier phalanx units. The final mainline infantry unit is the Armenian Legionnaires. Now, the Armenian Legionnaires also have an attack of 7. They have a defense of 16, but they have a missile attack of 11. Legionnaires have good stamina and can sap, which makes them excellent for flanking maneuvers. They can hold up well against cavalry. However, because they can't form a testudo like modern Roman legionnaires, it is very difficult to have this unit fighting ranged cavalry. So, use the heavy spearmen in a phalanx position, which provides the maximum amount of defense. In the initial push, once enemies hit your phalanx, quickly take your legionnaires and flank around the back. The legionnaires will be able to make quick work because of an immediate missile attack into the back of the enemy plus the melee charge. Taking a look at our ranged units, though, things get a little bit more finicky. We have Peltis available to us, which have a melee attack of 3 and a defense of 4, essentially putting them on par with your peasants. However, they have a missile attack of 6, which isn't anything too special, but they have a bonus versus elephants and chariots. This is very, very strange because, as most people know, Peltis are one of the units that you love to take out with a cavalry charge or a flank. But these Peltis by Armenia have the bonus of fighting against chariots and elephants. Elephants have anywhere between 4 and 5 hit points, depending on what type of elephant it is. However, Peltists can deal 2 hit points to elephants instead of the normal 1. The other unit, the archers, have also a melee attack of 3, total defense of 2, but a missile attack of 7. These archers have the default amount of ammunition that most archer units have, so they won't be able to stand in long battles against Pharaoh's bowmen or the Roman archer auxilia. Moving on, there's only really one specific cavalry type for the Armenians, and it is the cataphracts. The cataphracts have an attack of 7, but a total defense of 23. Cataphracts are used exclusively in flanking positions, but because of their high defense, they can also go toe-to-toe against some of the more dangerous chariot units. Putting cataphracts against scythed chariots, though, especially when the chariots are already in an attacking position, is essentially suicide. But if the cataphracts hit first, chances are that chariot unit is gone. It is important to note that with cataphracts, they have a very, very powerful charge. This powerful charge is able to knock enemies into the air, causing huge morale damage. Because of this huge morale damage, having the cataphracts monitor and move around the flanks can be just enough to have units rout without actually having to put the cataphracts into the fray. Ranged units, we have default horse archers, which have a melee attack of 3 and a missile attack of 7, total defense of 2. What's nice about these horse archers is even though they can form a Cantabrian circle, the best use for these horse archers is actually to utilize them in a permanent retreating fashion. A permanent retreating fashion will allow your horse archers to eventually wrap around infantry units that are chasing or slowly whittle down cavalry units in hot pursuit. Because they also have the fast moving bonus, they can pretty much outrun most cavalry units. The only cavalry unit that I have been able to see catch up to horse archers are Roman general units. However, a little bit later in the game, you'll get access to cataphract archers. Cataphract archers have a melee attack of 9, a missile attack of 7, and a total defense of 22. They also have long-range missiles, which allows them to fight most archer warbands and archer groups. Because they have such a high defense, your cataphract archers can be used as regular cataphracts. However, they are very expensive. As you can see, the recruitment cost is 1,230 for the archers, where the cataphracts are 940. The cataphract archers also take 2 turns to recruit, same as the regular cataphracts. Moving on, we have 2 different general types that you can get. You have the first general, which you can get at the beginning of the game, which is a missile general unit. Missile general unit only has 4 or 5 throws before it has completely exhausted its ammunition. However, because of the goofiness of the game, it will always try and remove the ammunition and utilize it first before actually engaging in hand-to-hand combat. Because of this, if for whatever reason there's a little bit more ammunition left in your general unit, it is possible that you could just straight up lose the general due to them not willing to take out their swords. Melee attack of 12 and a total defense of 15 puts it on the weaker side of the main generals. However, if you're fortunate enough to get some armored Eastern generals, they're essentially a little bit stronger variant of your cataphracts. Because general units can even reach up to 110, armored Eastern general units with the amount of XP that you can gain from battles and upgrading means that your total defense can reach 36, basically making it an absolute tank. The only siege unit available to the Armenians is the onagers. And these are your default onagers. There's nothing inherently special about them. Because these aren't Roman onagers, these onagers also get a plus 10% accuracy decrease. So let's take a look at some of the routes that we should take as Armenia in order to get a true victory. Here's a game of Armenia that we did on stream when we first started doing Rome Total War on Twitch. There is a lot to go over here. The main priority with Armenia when you start off is once again trying to do as much damage and taking over the Turkish peninsula. When we played this game, however, we got a little silly with it and decided to make the Seleucid Empire a protectorate. After you conquer Turkey, a lot of people, newer players, suspect maybe hitting Egypt is the next strategy or pulling over into Greece. Actually, it's more important to focus on islands. So once you take the first half of Turkey, securing Crete as a trade port and Rhodes will allow your economy to soar. As you can see right now, our economy in some of these cities is absolutely ridiculous, with Halicarnassus making 4,000 denarii a turn, Kydonia at 2,000, Rhodes at 2,500, Pergamum at 3,000, and Athens at almost 8,000 gold. Once you hit the Greek mainland, though, you're going to want to make sure that you have cataphracts available and your spearmen. Taking a look at some of our armies that we had left, most of these are just cataphracts, heavy spearmen, and a few archers to provide support. While most of those units were pretty dinky, one of our units of heavy spearmen with silver sword and shield upgrades, along with 1 silver experience point, gives us a total defense of 23 and an attack of 13, putting them on par with Spartan hoplites. Some of our better cataphract units, though, have an attack of 13 and a defense of 30, allowing us to break through Roman lines with ease. Once you take over the Greek mainland, then it's time to start focusing on Egypt. If Egypt decides to attack you before then, you have to eliminate Egypt outright. Otherwise, their massive armies and their economy down here in Alexandria, Memphis, and Thebes will unfortunately overrun you. especially if they have a ton of chariots, Pharaoh's guard, and Pharaoh's archers available. Once you take either the Greek mainland or Egypt, it's time to make a decision. You have one of two options. You can either continue across North Africa, fighting the Scipii, taking Thapsus, Carthage, Cirta, and Tingi, or you can attempt to remove the Brutii, taking Apollonia, Thermon, Larissa, Tarentum, and Croton. In my experience playing as Armenia, it's way easier to go after the Brutii first, and once you eliminate them by taking Tarentum and Croton, you can move armies across North Africa, taking key cities, and then finally having the last stand at Lilybaeum, Syracuse, Messana, and Capua. Taking Rome then is pretty simple. Once again, it's just a lot of cataphracts, a lot of spearmen, and a lot of archers. Some of these cataphracts, remember, have an attack of 14 and a defense of 30. You will not be able to defeat the Julii. What you can do, however, is as you're hitting the late game, securing treaties with Britain, Spain, and Carthage, if they still exist, are paramount. When we streamed this game, we got a little silly with it, but usually the Seleucid Empire would have already been wiped out, and you would have had a lot of access into the northern territories. So Macedon and Thrace would have already been wiped out by you. So that covers strategy, and we've covered the units. So what makes Armenia so special? The interesting thing about Armenia is because you have access to both rebel cities and neighboring factions right off the bat, so long as you build up your economy early, you can consistently churn out units, allowing you to create large armies to fight against your neighbors. Your starting city of Kote, though, has almost nothing. A governor's villa, simple barracks, a wooden palisade, and a land clearance. Artaxarta has the same exact thing, except a stables as well, which will allow you to recruit your horse archers. However, don't be fooled. Taking a look at the building browser, the stables, you only need to upgrade once more to get cataphrat archers, which will allow you to dominate on the battlefield when you're doing your retreat type tactics. Your practice range will give you peltists, but taking a look, the militia barracks will allow you to get access to hillmen, which is going to be very important if you decide to go after Pontus first. The city barracks, though, gives you access to heavy spearmen. At that point, you are running the game. There are 3 temples that you can choose from as the Armenians: Shrine to Vakan, Shrine to Anahit, and Shrine to Armzad. The Awesome Temple gives you a public order bonus of 20, upgrades light weapons by 1, upgrades armor by 1, and gives experience bonus to troops here by 2. Anahit gives a public order bonus due to happiness of 40%. And the Armazd gives a essential happiness bonus of 40%. So when you have two temples that are just to make people happy, and you have one temple that churns out better trained troops with upgrades to light armor, or excuse me, light weapons and armor, you can absolutely dominate with gold tiered units. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. We will be doing another strategy guide and playthrough for another faction later. I hope you all have an incredible day, and we will see you in the next one.